A shadow descends. In the autumn of 1347, Genoese trading ships docked at the Sicilian port of Messina. The sailors aboard carried more than spices and silks from the east. They brought with them an invisible passenger that would reshape European history. As the ship's crews disembarked, many were already marked by strange black swellings in their armpits and groins, their skin mottled with dark blotches. Within days, these men were dead, and the nightmare had begun. The Black Death, Bubonic Plague, had arrived in Europe. The scourge unleashed. What followed was perhaps the most devastating pandemic in human history. Between 1347 and 1351, the Black Death cut a swath of destruction across Europe, claiming between 75 and 200 million lives, approximately 1/3 to 1/2 of Europe's population. The disease spread with terrifying speed. From Sicily, it raced along trade routes, engulfing one city after another. Venice, Florence, Paris, London, none were spared. By 1348, it had reached England and Scandinavia. By 1350, it had penetrated deep into Russia. Everywhere the plague touched, it left devastation in its wake. The face of fear. The symptoms were as horrifying as they were distinctive. The disease often began with a high fever and an overwhelming sense of fatigue. Then came the buboes, painful swollen lymph nodes typically appearing in the neck, armpit, or groin. These black and purple swellings, sometimes as large as apples, gave the disease its name, the Black Death. As the infection progressed, the victim's skin would darken with hemorrhages beneath the surface, what physicians called God's tokens or death spots. The final stages brought delirium, vomiting of blood, and the unbearable stench of rotting flesh, even before death claimed the victim, usually within 3 to 5 days of the first symptoms. A society unraveled, the social fabric of medieval Europe quickly disintegrated in the face of such horror. As the Italian writer Giovanni Boccaccio observed, father abandoned child, wife, husband, one brother another, for this illness seemed to strike through breath and sight, and so they died, and none could be found to bury the dead for money or friendship. And many died with no one looking after them. And many died of hunger because when someone took to bed sick, another in the house, terrified, would say to him, "I'm going for the doctor." Then, having closed the door from the outside, I would not return again. Cities became charnel houses. In Paris, the chronicler Jean de Venette reported 800 deaths per day. In Siena, the dead were buried in mass graves, layer upon layer. In London, new cemeteries had to be consecrated outside the city walls when urban graveyards filled to capacity. Explaining the inexplicable. In a world without understanding of germs or infection, medieval people struggled to comprehend what was happening to them. Many saw the plague as divine punishment for humanity's sins. Processions of flagellants, religious zealots who whipped themselves bloody in acts of public penance, wound through the streets of European towns, hoping to appease God's wrath. Others blamed outsiders. Jewish communities faced devastating pogroms as they were accused of poisoning wells and spreading the disease. In February 1349, the entire Jewish population of Strasbourg, approximately 2,000 people, was arrested and burned alive on a wooden platform in the city's cemetery. Some physicians believed the disease spread through miasma, bad air arising from rotting matter. People carried posies of herbs or pomanders of fragrant substances, hoping their sweet smells would ward off infection. The invisible enemy. What medieval Europeans could not know was that their true enemy was microscopic. The bubonic plague was caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, which traveled in the gut of fleas that infested black rats. These rats, stowaways on merchant ships and constant companions in medieval cities, brought the disease into the heart of human habitations. When an infected flea bit a human, it often regurgitated the bacteria into the wound. From there, the bacteria would travel to the lymph nodes, causing the characteristic buboes. If the bacteria entered the bloodstream, they could cause septicemic plague, an even deadlier variant that killed almost 100% of its victims within 24 hours. If they infected the lungs, they caused pneumonic plague, which could spread directly from person to person through coughing and respiratory droplets. The world remade. When the first wave of the Black Death finally subsided around 1351, it left a transformed Europe in its wake. Labor shortages gave surviving peasants unprecedented bargaining power against their lords. Religious authority was questioned as the church had failed to protect its flock. A new focus on enjoying life while it lasted emerged in art and literature. Yet the plague was not finished. For centuries afterward, Bubonic Plague would periodically return to European cities, though never again with the same devastating impact as the Black Death. Not until the development of modern antibiotics in the 20th century would humanity gain the upper hand against this ancient enemy. The psychological scars ran even deeper than the demographic ones. The Black Death fundamentally altered how Europeans viewed death, disease, and their relationship with the divine. Its shadow looms large in Western culture even today, nearly 7 centuries later, a stark reminder of humanity's vulnerability in the face of nature's most terrifying forces. Quarantine practices, then and now. The word quarantine itself emerged from the Black Death era. It derives from the Italian quaranta giorni, or 40 days. The period Venetian authorities required ships to anchor in the harbor before allowing crew and passengers to disembark during plague outbreaks. This practice began in 1377 in the port city of Ragusa, modern-day Dubrovnik, Croatia, marking one of the first formally documented instances of institutionalized isolation to prevent disease spread. Medieval quarantine took various forms across Europe. Plague houses, dedicated buildings where infected individuals were confined until recovery or death. In many cities, these were hastily converted existing structures positioned away from population centers. Cordons sanitaires, physical barriers established around infected cities or regions, with armed guards preventing movement in or out. Milan employed this strategy effectively during the Black Death, suffering fewer deaths than comparable Italian cities. Marking of houses. In London and other cities, authorities marked plague-infected households with red crosses on doors, warning others to stay away. The occupants were confined inside, often with the dead and dying, for a prescribed period. These early methods, while crude by modern standards, represented the first systematic attempts at disease containment, establishing principles that would evolve into contemporary public health practices. Today's quarantine and isolation procedures reflect both continuity and evolution from these medieval beginnings. Hospital isolation units. Modern medicine employs negative pressure rooms, HEPA filtration, and sophisticated personal protective equipment rather than simple physical separation. Contact tracing. While medieval authorities might have tracked visible connections between plague victims, today's epidemiologists use digital tools and statistical modeling to map infection networks with precision. Ethical frameworks. Modern quarantine balances public health necessity with individual rights, a consideration largely absent from medieval practices. Global coordination. International bodies like the World Health Organization standardize quarantine protocols across borders, replacing the patchwork approaches of medieval city-states. The COVID-19 pandemic revived many quarantine practices not seen on a global scale since the early 20th century, demonstrating both how far public health has come and how persistent fundamental containment principles remain. Yet the ethical and psychological dimensions of isolation remain profoundly challenging. Physical containment may control disease spread, but it cannot address the deeper human suffering that accompanies separation. As Mother Teresa poignantly observed, the greatest disease in the West today is not TB or leprosy. It is being unwanted, unloved, and uncared for. The worst disease is to be nobody to anybody. This wisdom illuminates a paradox at the heart of quarantine practices throughout history. Measures that protect physical health can simultaneously deteriorate mental and emotional well-being. Medieval plague victims confined to plague houses experienced not just physical suffering, but profound abandonment. Similarly, during COVID-19 lockdowns, rates of depression, anxiety, and loneliness surged worldwide, particularly among the elderly and vulnerable populations already experiencing social isolation. Effective quarantine must therefore address both biological and psychological needs. The most successful modern approaches incorporate remote connection technologies, mental health support, and community care networks to mitigate isolation's harmful effects. These innovations recognize that true healing requires treating the whole person, not merely containing the pathogen. The challenge for future pandemic responses lies in balancing biological safety with fundamental human needs for connection, meaning, and dignity. The unending struggle. The Black Death forever altered humanity's relationship with infectious disease. Its devastating impact catalyzed the development of public health as a concept and practice. The first permanent health boards were established in Italian cities in the wake of recurring plague outbreaks, creating the institutional framework for government responsibility in disease prevention. This legacy continues in modern public health infrastructure, from disease surveillance networks and emergency response protocols to the very existence of health departments at local, national, and international levels. The plague's lessons about human interconnectedness and the need for coordinated responses remain fundamental to contemporary epidemic management. Yet despite technological and medical advances unimaginable to medieval physicians, infectious diseases continue to pose significant threats. The 21st century has already witnessed the emergence of novel pathogens like SARS, MERS, and SARS-CoV-2, the resurgence of diseases once thought controlled, including tuberculosis and measles, the evolution of antimicrobial-resistant superbugs that evade our most powerful treatments, increasing risk factors for pandemics, including global travel, urbanization, and climate change. Even Yersinia pestis itself, the bacterium responsible for the Black Death, remains present in rodent populations across parts of Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Though now treatable with antibiotics when caught early, bubonic plague still causes outbreaks, with approximately 650 cases reported annually worldwide. The bubonic plague's transition from history's deadliest pandemic to a manageable, though still dangerous disease represents both triumph and warning. It demonstrates that human ingenuity can overcome even the most terrifying pathogens, while reminding us that nature's microbial arsenal continues to evolve and adapt alongside us. The Black Death's most important lesson may be the need for perpetual vigilance, that public health requires not just responsive capacity, but sustained investment in research, infrastructure, and global cooperation. As we face future pandemic threats, the echoes of medieval plague bells serve as both historical caution and call to action. Our ongoing struggle against infectious disease connects us directly to those who witnessed the Black Death's terror nearly 7 centuries ago, bound together in the fundamental human endeavor to survive and protect one another from invisible threats that recognize no social boundaries. A brighter horizon. Despite the sobering historical lessons of the Black Death and the challenges revealed by recent pandemics, there is considerable reason for optimism about humanity's future relationship with infectious disease. The convergence of scientific advancement, technological innovation, and lessons learned from past epidemics positions us for increasingly effective responses. The rapid decoding of pathogen genomes now happens in days rather than years, allowing scientists to track mutations, transmission patterns, and origins with unprecedented precision. The identification of patient zero cases, nearly impossible during the Black Death, has become standard practice in outbreak investigation, enabling more targeted containment strategies that minimize broader societal disruption. Artificial intelligence has emerged as a powerful ally in this fight, with algorithms that can predict outbreak patterns before they become epidemics, identify promising treatment compounds from billions of possibilities, detect subtle signals of emerging diseases in global data streams, model transmission dynamics to optimize intervention strategies. These technological capabilities, combined with deeper understanding of human psychology and ethics, point toward more humane quarantine practices that protect both physical health and emotional well-being. The future of disease control need not repeat the stark isolation of medieval plague houses or the sometimes dehumanizing aspects of modern containment. Perhaps most importantly, the global scientific community has demonstrated its capacity for extraordinary collaboration when faced with shared threats. The development of multiple effective vaccines within a year of the SARS-CoV-2 identification represents an achievement unimaginable to physicians who confronted the Black Death with little more than herbal remedies and prayer. The terror of the Black Death fundamentally altered human society, catalyzing advancements in medicine, public health, and social organization that continue to protect us today. Our modern struggles with infectious disease, while substantial, occur within a context of unprecedented knowledge and capability. As we continue to decode the mysteries of microbial threats, strengthen global health systems, and apply ethical wisdom to containment practices, we move steadily toward a world where pandemics may still occur, but need never again decimate populations as the Black Death once did. The unending struggle continues, but with each passing year, humanity's position grows stronger. The Black Death's legacy, ultimately, may be the knowledge and determination that drive us toward increasingly effective protection of human life and dignity in the face of nature's microscopic threats. Next episode, Who Decides When We Die? Please subscribe, Dr. Moore's Diaries, Whispers from the Morgue.